All right, so here's my two-wheel drive to four-wheel drive conversion. So this is a 1980 two-wheel drive pickup that I converted to a four-wheel drive. So I started with just a solid axle off an 83, rebuilt the knuckles, put on a high steer kit. I think I got those at Low Range Off-Road. There's obviously, on a two-wheel drive, they don't use leaf springs. It uses torsion bar suspension, so I had to put on a cross member to accommodate the front leaf springs. So I got that one from Slag Factory. It's pretty nice, but I wish I would have inset it a little bit on the frame, which I may do later. But so here's looking at the front cross member. I just stuck it underneath the two frame rails, and I should have notched the frame rails and slid it up. I'll show you a side view. It makes doing it this way, taking that cross member and just sticking it on the bottom, makes the front end ride higher than the back. And obviously you can compensate for that on the back pretty easily, just slipping in some shims, but I thought it would look nicer if it were recessed a little bit behind this body panel here. This kind of hangs down below and is visible. I'd rather it be behind that little, this is like a little cowling or something. So the steering, moving back a little bit from the cross member, this is the regular steering. It has manual steering on this model, and it worked out great. I used the high steer kit from Low Range, and the Pitman arm. I don't think I replaced the Pitman. That's the factory Pitman arm. And I mean, I could use a drop Pitman arm to get those angles a little bit better between the tie rods and stuff. I don't even know what they're all called, but it worked out fine. I still don't have any power steering yet. I've got the kit to do a power steering box edition or whatever, but I haven't done that yet. I've just been kind of slack on moving towards that. I had to cut off the frame supports for the suspension from the two-wheel drive. On the frame here, there was a pretty much right behind that shock there, and there where the along here on the frame was factory welded bracketry that needed to be cut off. And obviously with the front suspension, or the front shock mounts rather, were between the I don't really know what they were called. I guess they're called upper and lower, maybe control arms or something like that. They had a mount for the shock, so I had to fabricate this mount. It was I bought it from, like I said, probably Off-Road, Low Range Off-Road or something like that. Just kind of cut it to length. I wasn't really sure how to do it, so I just measured where the shock was halfway between the bottomed out and the fully extended section. Strapped it with a zip tie halfway in between, and then sort of measured and marked where I needed to fabricate that shock mount, and sort of half-ass welded it onto the frame. So on the two-wheel drive frame, there's obviously no place for the shackle on the rear of the front leaf springs to go. So there's a jig you can get from Low Range Off-Road. I'll put a picture in there to where you can see it. And that slides all the way up to this left side of this body mount. Let me see if I can, yeah, so the jig basically clips onto the frame and slides all the way up. and orients the hole where it needs to be, so you can mark where your hole needs to go through the frame. And I'll show you what it looks like so that from the bottom, so you can see that the frame is angled, so the holes have to sort of be, I guess, offset a little bit. So here you can see that the that tube goes through the frame. The frame is actually angled, goes out from the widest point back towards the rear, and then kind of steps in. So I'm in line with the front leaf spring, but you can see that the frame has to be cut in such a way to let that tube run through there. And then the shackles are kind of that offset design to accommodate for that, where the frame kind of turns in and gets narrower around the engine compartment. So here's the other side. Something hanging down, but it's just some electrical tape, but that's the other side there. I used a plasma torch instead of trying to drill a hole. On the passenger side, you have good access if you were to use a hole saw, but on the driver's side, you don't have a lot of room. You've got your exhaust pipe runs in there, and you can take that out. But there's still not a lot of room between the transmission and where you need to do it. It's probably only about 12 inches. So it's kind of tight between there. I can put a tape on there and see what it is, but you can see that it's fairly close. The two-wheel drive has a different kind of cross member that supports the transmission. It's almost like the transmission hangs from the cross member, as opposed to the four-wheel drive where the cross member goes underneath. I did replace the transmission from my two-wheel drive to a four-wheel drive transmission and transfer case. That allowed me to put I put a new flywheel on, a heavier flywheel. I think it's I want to say maybe a 30-pound flywheel. I'll have to look it up and see. And then the frame on the two-wheel drive, here and here, on a four-wheel drive frame, there's supposed to be a little place where the frame sort of jets out, and that's where your bolt would go through this hole and this hole. Obviously this is a different frame, so what I did is I lifted up with a jack the transmission and the cross member, and then drilled a hole and put in a nutsert. Probably not the safest or most secure way to support a transmission, but I don't care. And so there's two on this side and two on the other side. Over here you can see where the original two-wheel drive the original two-wheel drive cross member was. It went, like I said, it went from the frame up and over the top of the transmission. And this one on the four-wheel drive rather goes down underneath it. On the driver's side, I had a lot of access, so I just cut that entire cross member off. You can see the remnants of it there on the inside of the frame. And then I'll swing around and show you I left some of the cross member on this side because on top it supported my gas lines and stuff, so I left some of it, and then I ended up using it for a mounting bracket for my parking brake. I'll show you a different video of that later. And then as far as the rear axle, I had to so the two-wheel drive wheels are 5 lug. So I didn't want to have to try to figure out how to, and they were on 14-inch rims. So I went ahead and replaced the rear axle, and it bolted right up. I mean, this is the factory connection there. And I just replaced the shackles with a little bit beefier model. I think I got those at not Low Range Off-Road. It's a different place. I'll put in there what it is. But yeah, so that's you know, so I did a front and rear axle, transmission, transfer case, and but you can tell from the body, this is a long bed, but you can tell from the body that it doesn't have those rear fender flares that you traditionally see on 4-wheel drive Toyotas of this you know, this first generation Toyota pickup. Same thing with the front. They have the steel flared out fender. I thought about doing that to kind of make it look a little bit more authentic, but I don't really want to paint it, and so I'm just kind of postponing that for right now. And then inside the cab, whenever I put that new transmission with the transfer case in, I had to you know, obviously cut some holes in that, I call it a doghouse. I don't know what it really is called, but the transmission area directly above the transmission. I want to say, I think the transmission shifter moved forward 4 to 6 inches, and the existing hole for the transmission is where the transfer case shifter came out, but I could be wrong. I can't really remember, but I just, you know, I've got obviously you can see I've got the 2 captain's chairs that slide with like a little center console. This isn't even really bolted down, and I just made a little aluminum plate, kind of give me some room to make my shifts. I still need to tweak that a little bit. I kind of hit it some going into 5th gear. I sort of hit, and reverse is good, but going into 5th gear I sort of bump. I need to notch that out a little bit more, but I'm putting in factory AC, so that's where that's why that duct is there. There's the AC box already mounted, but that's a whole nother video.